Namaskar. Dear friends, I would like to welcome you all, those who are present here physically, as well as those who are joining us virtually, to this special event to commemorate the 150th birth anniversary of the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, whom we fondly call Bapu. Gandhiji was born on 2nd October 1869. His 150th birth anniversary was on 2nd October 2019. To honor the life and contribution made by the Mahatma, especially in leading us in achieving our independence from the British by peaceful and non-violent means, the Government of India decided to celebrate this landmark occasion over a 2-year period from 2nd October 2018 till 2nd October 2020. As we pay our tribute to the apostle of peace and brotherhood, we must never forget the message of Gandhiji's life. He reminded humanity the true values of harmonious coexistence and mutual respect. He championed the cause of equality and freedom of all individuals. Gandhiji's ideals, values, and philosophy of humanism, compassion, and non-violence continues to be relevant and inspiring to the contemporary world, transcending the artificial socio-economic and national divisions of modern times. Over the past 2 years, the High Commission of India in Brunei Darussalam has organized a number of events to celebrate Gandhi at 150. These include rendering of Gandhiji's favorite bhajan, Vaishnava Janato, by Mr. Fakhrul Razi, a renowned Bruneian singer. Publication of an article by Mr. Ayad Samhan Naiwa, a Bruneian conservationist, on the subject What Gandhi Means to Me for the Gandhi Anthology compiled by the Ministry of External Affairs. A vegetarian food festival accompanied with a tree planting event at India House. Cultural program themed on Gandhiji's organized by the Bandar Seri Begawan Indian Association. This occasion also had the release of a brochure on Gandhiji as a central theme. SOL's event, that is the Solar Urja through Localization of Sustainability program by IIT Mumbai, which was organized in partnership with Kemuda Institute Brunei. Through this program, 500 solar lamps were assembled by 500 students from 10 different schools in Brunei to increase awareness on climate change by using solar energy. The lamps were later gifted to the students who had assembled them. Lastly, Indian Association Belait held a drawing, coloring, and speech competition on Mahatma Gandhi. Today, we are privileged to organize Gandhi Katha by Dr Shobhana Radhakrishna, an expert on Gandhiji. Dr Radhakrishna was born and brought up in Mahatma Gandhi's ashram in Sevagram in Maharashtra. Over the past 2 decades, she has been spreading Gandhiji's philosophy to the people of India and abroad through lectures, workshops, and Gandhi Kathas. She has traveled to 42 countries and presented 148 lectures and Gandhi Kathas. She has actively contributed during the past 2 years to worldwide celebrations of Gandhi at 150. I would like to thank Dr. Radhakrishna for kindly consenting to participate in today's event with Gandhi Katha. I'm sure all of us will benefit from the life and philosophy of Gandhiji through this event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you, High Commissioner of India, H.E. Shri Ajnish Kumarji, for your kind message. Namaskar and welcome to the Gandhi Katha, story of Mahatma Gandhi, narrated by me during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, his wife. I express my deep gratitude to the High Commission of India in Brunei Darussalam and the Indian Association of Belait for hosting this Gandhi Katha amidst these challenging times to learn from Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of truth, non-violence, and purity of means, his spirituality, his environmental credo, his practices of health and wellness of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the entire humanity. On October 2nd, the world celebrates the UN International Day of Nonviolence, and in India, we celebrate the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi as Gandhi Jayanti. The entire world is remembering Mahatma Gandhi, the apostle of peace and non-violence. We have an opportunity to remind the humanity of the efficacy of the messages of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation. Contacts between India and Brunei have historical and cultural roots as extension of India's relation with peninsular Malaysia and the Indonesian island was very, very great. I pay respects to the leading lights of Brunei Darussalam and convey my wishes to the people of Brunei Darussalam and the Indian community members who have joined me online today. Gandhi Katha is based on the Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling with hymns and narration. I have given talks on Gandhi Katha in 94 countries during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi in the past 2 years. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Many have been inspired by him to take up the cudgels against injustice through nonviolence. Others have followed his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his simple spiritual life. The humanism of the world's thought leaders is so deeply reflected in Mahatma Gandhi's teachings. The new generation is eager to understand more about this greatest man of the last century who made such a huge impact on humanity and inspired many world leaders across the globe. Today, in the field of international conflict resolution, people are interested in the effectiveness of peaceful means for ending disputes, as demonstrated by Mahatma Gandhi, compared with the use of force or violence. In peace building contexts, the practitioners and scholars are seeking to integrate authentic, indigenous, and local cultural methods of conflict analysis and interventions. People are finding inspiration in Mahatma Gandhi's ideals and his lifelong effort of peace building and conflict resolution through interfaith dialogues for establishing harmony. Throughout his life, Mahatma Gandhi was engaged in finding solutions through this method. Gandhiji had deep respect for world religion and developed lifelong friendship with people from different religions. He took time to study, reflect, and engage with different faiths and faith communities. During his lifetime, Gandhiji had read the Holy Quran more than once and also many books on Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It made a deep impression on him that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, often fasted and prayed, and that he had revelations not in moments of ease and luxurious living, but when he fasted and prayed, kept awake for nights together, and would be on his feet the whole night as he received revelations. Mahatma Gandhi cultivated respect for Islam. To Gandhiji, the central teaching of the Holy Quran remained that of peace. He regarded Islam as a religion of peace. He found Muslims to be brave, generous, and trusting. He sought to gain Muslim friendship through love. His ultimate remedy was to deal with the wrong, but not with the wrongdoer. Thus, to him, the ultimate answer lay in the concept of live and let live, or mutual forbearance and toleration in life. He said that this is the lesson he had learned from the Holy Quran. Mahatma Gandhi used to start and end his day with prayers. In the ashrams, every activity and program used to begin and end with prayers, in which prayers from all the religions were sung. Gandhiji's internal core comprised of the essence of all the religions, one that he had acquired from long study and reflection, the devotional poetry of the same poets that he had heard, sung, and absorbed since childhood made up a significant part of the life of his soul. He said that ultimately all the religions point to the same truth of compassion, love, forgiveness, and tolerance, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence and must have friendship and respect for the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. All of Gandhiji's friends were from different religions and cultural background from around the world, and he actively encouraged friendship across religions. One of Mahatma Gandhi's legacies to the world is nonviolent conflict resolution through interfaith dialogues for establishing brotherhood, communal unity, and harmony. In the ashram in the morning and evening, the first verse From the Ishopanishad, the shortest Upanishad from India, used to be recited, and that was Ishavasya sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridha kasya svidhanam. That everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing really belongs to us. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non attachment, taking as much as you need and leaving the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to you. I will play the Gandhi Katha hymn in Hindi, which explains this entire concept of renounce and rejoice that Gandhiji practiced in the form of a song.
नायः तेरा नायः मेरा नायः तेरा नायः मेरा ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का जल ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का जल ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का ही राज है ईश्वर का ही राज है नायः तेरा नायः मेरा नायः तेरा नायः मेरा ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का जल ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का जल ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का ही राज है ईश्वर का ही राज है
Even after 7 decades have passed since Gandhiji passed on, in every part of the world, his relevance is as relevant as before, and his visions and actions are of an enduring significance at all times and in all places. His approach to life was holistic and cannot be divided into watertight compartments of social, religious, political, personal, and public life. Gandhiji stands out as the champion not only of political democracy but also of economic and spiritual democracy in today's world. Gandhiji believed that moral degeneration is the root cause of all evils, including conflicts. This explains his lifelong crusade of attainment of moral values such as truthfulness, non-violence, purity of means, love, self-control, forgiveness, respect, friendliness, compassion, mercy, and so on. For Gandhiji, the principle of satyagraha or non-violent resistance and civil disobedience was by non-cooperation with evil through the moral values of love force, truth force, soul force, sacrifice, and self-suffering. For him, the consideration for the sufferings of the fellow human beings was of paramount importance. His belief and actions were firmly rooted in the fact that social change for establishing justice and dignity of humans is both less harmful and more sustainable when achieved by non-violent means. His legacy of satyagraha is widely recognized and followed the world over and is seen in many movements for civil rights even today. Mahatma Gandhi's environmental practices were based on conservation of natural resources, which are often misused and overused for the sake of development. Gandhiji had warned about the unsustainability on the global scale a century ago when he had declared that the earth has enough for man's needs, but not for man's greed. Equality for women within the society was a principle Gandhiji passionately believed in. His vision of Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, becomes very relevant in the crisis of internally displaced people and migrants. And he may well have kept in mind the very basic unit of human organization, which is a village or a county. His vision of Gram Swaraj, which is a self reliant, independent, self governed village, is built on the premises of sustainable growth and is the need of the hour. According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it throughout his life till the very last breath. Gandhiji, Gandhiji's adherence to truth, non-violence, and purity of means has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha so that people can put their hearts into understanding Gandhiji, learn from his non-violence and truth, get inspired to learn from his extraordinary ethical and moral leadership, his simple spiritual life, revolutionary thoughts, actions, his lifelong service to humanity against all forms of injustice, and how he continues to inspire people in all parts of the globe at all times and in all ages. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was to be nothing but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. That was the path on which the teachers of the world had already traveled. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards and find inspiration through self introspection, self examination, and self purification. This he did by repeated questioning. And that question was, Ko aham, who am I? What am I? And what is the real purpose of my life? This question has been asked in our ancient Indian civilization since the past 5,000 years. The answer came to Gandhiji that the real purpose of life was to serve others. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Mahatma Gandhi. He said, Truth is God, Satya hi Parmeshwar hai. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of being truthful, of being good, and doing good to others. The second realization was that in spite of all the upheavals in the history of humankind, humanity will only progress in an auspicious direction because truth, that is God, is only interested in the welfare of its creation. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily. But because of this understanding of oneness, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle any scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect to everyone. That was one of his traits. He respected individuals as individuals. And that is another trait that we see in Gandhiji. Romeo Rolla, the famous French writer and a pacifist who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, had written the biography of Mahatma Gandhi in 1924, and the world came to know about Gandhiji in 1931 on his way back from the Second Roundtable Conference in London. He stopped by in Switzerland and spent 5 days in Belait with Rolla, discussing the crisis of civilization. Rolla wrote, and I quote, "This little man is so fragile in appearance, is tireless, and fatigue is a word that does not exist in his vocabulary. He could calmly answer for hours without a muscle of his face twitching. His mind proceeds through successive experiments into action, and he follows a straight line, but he never stops." I will play the Gandhi Katha hymn in Hindi, which elaborates on Gandhiji's definition of truth as having harmony between thought, word, and deeds.
मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान।
Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy was primarily truth centered. Truth was the first and foremost principle in Gandhian philosophy. Gandhiji's life was a continuous series of experiments with truth, and that's what is the name of his autobiography, too. He applied his philosophy to his own life through selfless service and to practical social and political service through his nonviolent civil disobedience campaigns, which he termed as Satyagraha. And Satyagraha is Gandhiji's first gift to humanity. For Gandhiji, truth is the relative truth of truthfulness in thought, word, and deed, and the absolute truth, the ultimate reality. This ultimate truth is God, and morality, the moral laws and code, its basis. Another aspect that gave him strength was the clarity that he had acquired from years of experiments and reflection on the philosophical content of Satyagraha. He was clear that Satyagraha was based on the principle of Advaita, of non duality. If the same essence of soul encompasses all human beings, it would allow a Satyagrahi to become one with the oppressor. Any failure to touch and reach out to the opponent would be a failure of Satyagrahi and not a shortcoming of the philosophy of Satyagraha. Moreover, with the experience that he had had over the years, he had begun to see love as the very powerful and positive force. The challenge before him was to use this force with effect. The bigger the challenge, the more enthused Gandhiji was by it. Gandhiji realized that untruth, injustice, oppression, and tyranny last only as long as their victims accept them. The moment one learns to say no to untruth and injustice, their edifice collapses immediately. This was true for the political, the economic, and the social order. Mahatma Gandhi is the greatest apostle of peace the world has seen. in the recent past. His notion of peace is focused on tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, oneness, truth force, love force, soul force, suffering, self sacrifice to melt the hearts of the hardest of adversaries. Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist of the first half of the 20th century, had called Mahatma Gandhi as the supreme practical leader for change and listening to his voice.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
Gandhiji was the conscience keeper of humanity. That his ideas will be an inspiration for us both as individuals and as a society is beyond any doubt. He was an epoch maker, one who could sow the seeds for the next generation from the fruits of the previous one. Mahatma Gandhi is the most powerful visionary and a practical idealist from the first half of the last century, whose life is a role model for all of us. But the effort has to begin from a point where you are standing. That is what made all Mahatma Gandhi's idealist actions practical, and he can be truly called a man of action. But it does not only mean that he was very busy, that he was. What we mean is the action of putting ideas or beliefs into practice more than anything else was the driving force in his life. The answer for Mahatma Gandhi was always found in action. He had said, an ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. But if you want to understand Gandhiji, you will have to understand him not only with the intellect, but also from the emotional part of you and from acts from his life. Usually, people see him from different perspectives. Some people think of Gandhiji mostly as a politician, but at the same time, some would think of him as a saint. And there are others who will think of Gandhiji as a nation builder. He may be all of these, but I think when we consider Gandhiji, we have to try to find out what is the common stream in all these different aspects of life that you see in his personality. One was the commitment to values, and the second one was efficiency in the kind of work that he did. This is part of his comprehensiveness, and there was a unique blend of, for example, enthusiasm on one hand and patience on the other. Mahatma Gandhi has made significant and seminal contributions that span across such disciplines such as nonviolence, economics, peace, spirituality, conflict resolution, environment, social reforms, international peace, civil rights, education, spiritualization of politics, and much more. At that time, the most harmful impact and destructive impact on the world was that of imperialism, violence, war, materialism, and the greed for controlling the world. Mahatma Gandhi advised to shun these seven social sins in his speech on October 22nd, 1925. Politics without principle, wealth without work, commerce without ethics, knowledge without character, pleasure without conscience, science without morality, worship without sacrifice. In my opinion, Mahatma Gandhi's life left the most powerful and strong imprint on the humanity of the world, and he had said, my life is my message. John Haynes Holmes was a pacifist, an anti-war activist, and the founder of American Civil Liberties Union. He had met Gandhiji in London in 1931 and later on in Delhi in 1947. He found Mahatma Gandhi's presence, those bright eyes shining through his spectacles, his voice so clear and yet so gentle, the whole presence so simple and yet so strong. He said, and I quote, I believe that he is unquestionably the greatest man living in the world today. When I think of Gandhi, I think of Jesus Christ. I will play the Gandhi Katha dhun in Hindi about Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, and purity of means, which combine together in the form of Satyagraha.
लागिरे लगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सत्य अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन
Time magazine had listed out the most important protests over 190 years. The first one was the Boston Tea Party. The second one was the Dandi March or Salt Satyagraha. And the third one was the March of Washington. We can see a common thread. The first and second were against the same company, the East India Company. There is a common thread of non-violence in all three. In 1930, with a pinch of salt, Mahatma Gandhi shook the world. He started out on 12th March from his Sabarmati ashram in Ahmedabad in Gujarat for the Dandi seashore with 79 fellow marchers. Walked for 24 days, walking 10 miles a day, stopped at 48 villages, gave speeches in the morning and evening to mobilize people to participate in Salt Satyagraha and covered 241 miles till he reached Dandi seashore on 5th April. In the early hours of the morning of 6th April, when he bent down to pick up a fistful of muddy lump of earth with salt, 100,000 people joined him, and towards the end of the Salt Satyagraha, 300,000 people broke the salt law all over India. 101,362 newspapers covered the news, and there were many correspondents from the foreign countries. William Lawrence Shearer, the American journalist, was present during the Salt Satyagraha, and his graphic reporting brought the incidents of violence unleashed by the British to the notice of the world. And the world woke up to the power of non-violence and the Satyagraha. So Mahatma Gandhi remains the most powerful global ambassador of non-violence, a youth icon for opposing injustice of all kinds, an apostle of peace and non-violence, a man whose values can make the world a better place today. Gandhiji had spent the first 18 years of his formative life in India, where the seeds of spirituality were sown. 3 years spent in London as a student of law gave him an opportunity to interact with thinkers and reformers of that time. And as he read the works of the great poets and philosophers of the West, his vision expanded, and his understanding of the worldview became very clear. He, in 3 years, he became a barrister. Not only that, he also learnt the lessons of citizenship. Gandhiji spent close to 20 years in South Africa as a political leader and a social organizer. In 1904, in South Africa, after reading John Ruskin's book, Unto This Last, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi transformed his life overnight and started leading a community life of self control, voluntary poverty, bread labor, and Sarvodaya, welfare of all. He established 4 ashrams in his lifetime: two in South Africa, called Phoenix Settlement in 1904 and Tolstoy Farm in 1910, and two ashrams in India: Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad in Gujarat in 1917 and the Sevagram Ashram in Wardha, Maharashtra in 1936, where Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi, along with the ashram community, lived in poverty like the common villagers of India. Ashrams were Gandhiji's ideals of a non-violent face-to-face society for Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, self-reliance, Swabalamban, cleanliness, Swachhata, carrying out constructive programs, and seva, service to humanity, for realizing his vision of village republic or Gram Swaraj. Constructive activity program is his second gift to humanity. Mahatma Gandhi's ashrams had a mingling of political and spiritual aim. It was a practical laboratory for transforming ordinary men and women into extraordinary seekers and satyagrahis, for offering the highest sacrifice in the freedom struggle on one hand, and to get involved in the constructive programs to serve the poorest of the poor by establishing their self respect and dignity. I am happy to inform you that I was born in Gandhiji's last ashram, the Sevagram ashram. My father was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood and joined the non-violent freedom struggle in India and lived in the Sevagram ashram. Even after Gandhiji passed on in 1948, for more than 5 decades, my parents and all of us have continued to walk on the path that Gandhiji has shown to humanity. Anyone is free to experiment with that. The life and thoughts of Gandhiji are intertwined and inseparable. His politics was imbued with his spiritual experiments, and his spirituality was tempered by his vision of a non-violent, face-to-face society, and his constructive program was integral to his politics. The unique practices of Mahatma Gandhi, his control of palate, his fasts, his spinning, his silence, and his prayers gave him the internal strength. They were as much a part of his politics as of his spiritual life. These practices and experiments were sustained and nurtured by the inmates of the ashram that he had founded. The ashram communities, through their own practice, affirmed, modified, and validated Mahatma Gandhi's ideals and practices and continue to do so even till today. This shows the relevance of his practices. Gandhiji carried out all his experiments in health and wellness through nature cure, diet control, hydrotherapy, mud bath, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day. Our friend and British Quaker Sir Horace Alexander stayed in Gandhiji's ashrams, both the ashrams in India, for quite some time and noticed that the bell used to ring 56 times during the day. He said, and I quote, Gandhi had wonderful courtesy and punctuality. I was to learn quickly that he was the slave of watch. He had more to do in every 24 hours than almost any other man. So he had learned how to pack the most into every minute. Yet He never gave the impression of being hurried and impatient. Gandhiji has given three gifts to humanity. The first one is Satyagraha, about which people know a lot, but not everything. Constructive programs about which very few people know, and Ekadasha Vrata, or the 11 observances, about which really people have no idea. These were a set of rules made by Gandhiji for the ashram community for spiritual progress and voluntary self control. And this is for everyone to control because to practice, because Gandhiji wanted the social values to be transformed into societal norms. The principle behind the Ekadasha Vrata, what you want others to do to you. Ivan Illich, the Croatian Austrian philosopher, had come to Sevagram ashram in 1980 and spent a week in the ashram. Every day he used to sit in Bapu Kuti, or Gandhiji's simple cottage made of bamboo and mud from the locally available material. And he sat there for a long time and said, and I quote, "This hut of Mahatma Gandhi demonstrates to the world how the dignity of the common man can be brought up. It is also a symbol of happiness which we can derive from practicing the principles of simplicity, service, and truthfulness." Now I will play the Gandhi Katha Dhun, which explains Gandhiji's philosophy of truth.
आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल.
Gandhiji's role and contribution to the political arena are well known. What is less known is his contribution towards health and well being. Gandhiji was a firm believer in the principle that a healthy mind keeps the body healthy, and he stressed the importance of a healthy lifestyle and positive thinking. His interest in health, hygiene, nutrition, and diseases was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that adopting preventive measures for diseases was better than treatment. He also said that it was important to focus on cleanliness, a controlled diet, and an exercise regimen, and that it would be best to avoid overconsumption of medicines, especially those that were not required. He was also a firm believer and practitioner of nature cure and conducted experiments related to diet and fasting from his student days. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused diseases and then remove that very cause, rather than falling ill again and again and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. Gandhiji was essentially a man of science. He approached problems in a scientific manner. Mahatma Gandhi's message to the world on the vital question of health and well being is very, very important. To him, the study of this question was part of service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. His message is simple and easy to follow. It encouraged everyone to respect simplicity, voluntary self control, reduce the wants, follow the tradition, culture, cultural practices, the values, the environmental credo, and treat oneself through nature cure for living in harmony with nature. He also advised that in order for keeping physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy, one should have perfect understanding of our bodies, which is made up of the five elements that are found in nature. And that is what has been told by our ancient seers and sages. And these five elements are air, water, fire, earth, and space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements is necessary. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande means you are the universe within the universe. As with the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you is the same as what is going on in the universe. From the mind body perspective, Gandhiji's standpoint was that health is an optimal integration of body, mind, spirit, soul, and environment. Environment is our extended body. Dr. Sherwood Eddy was a leading American Protestant missionary, a prolific writer, and an educator who visited Gandhiji in the Sabarmati ashram in 1929 and wrote that Gandhiji's bodily presence is like that of Apostle Paul or Socrates. He impressed us as the most childlike, the most transparent, the most lovable of man. His whole character is centered in his unique passion in truth and reality. Few people also know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies as frontline workers for treating patients and service of humanity. In 1918, when the entire world was struck by the Spanish influenza pandemic, Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center and treated and served the patients through nature cure, provided simple vegetarian diet to boost immunity, and maintained physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients, looked after their physical, mental, and spiritual needs, and gave them correct information, and helped them in being positive through prayers, meditation, and chanting, and taking care of each other during the time of the Spanish influenza pandemic. Gandhiji had said on November 10th, 1918, that our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint, Sanyam, and of imposing a limit on our acts. Gandhiji had written a book called The Key to Health in 1942 in August, in which he wrote that anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or the traditional health practitioners from day to day. Today, the world is facing three kinds of crises globally. First is the COVID 19 pandemic. The second is the serious and long drawn financial crisis. And the third one is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone. So we have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves by learning from the life of Gandhiji, which is so open, so transparent, so full of action, and there is so much to learn from his life. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, and soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness, that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family, as brothers and sisters, and whether we choose to see it or not, we only have one home, this planet Earth, our Mother Earth. Our ancient sages and seers have always looked upon us as Vishwamanava, global citizens, and said that the world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The current COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. But if we still return to the normal standard of finding happiness by chasing after money, power, position, lifelong consumerism, then COVID 19 has given the wake up call. The kind of lifestyle of empty consumerism and mass distractions has only increased the difference between the rich and poor, created the huge carbon footprint, increased the misery of the invisible poor masses. When a crisis makes you feel stressed, meditation, prayer, chanting, and being positive and calm relieves the stress response. Fear and anxiety are forms of stress that become exaggerated when events become uncertain, when you feel a loss of control over the situation, and when the stress keeps repeating itself without let up, the thinking mind reacts to all of these conditions. It always has, even in normal times. But a crisis brings stress into high relief, making it very capable of lowering the immune system of our bodies and causing inflammatory diseases. Decades ago, stress was classified as epidemic of modern life. The Gandhian way of life is the best guide to practicing the coping mechanism that induces fearlessness, relaxation, calmness, inner peace, absence of anxiety, and remaining calm and positive. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi comes across as the greatest healer and the wellness guru who comes free of cost. The Gandhian principles of freedom from fear and care for all is a perfect prescription in the times of crisis. Gandhiji's emphasis on healthy lifestyle, empowerment of self care, and care in the community would make perfect sense. I once again take this opportunity to thank the Indian Mission, the Indian Association of Belait for hosting Gandhi Katha. My special thanks are to all of you who have joined me online. I will end with the peace benediction in Sanskrit for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let all be happy. Let all be healthy. Let all experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. With Gandhiji's blessings, who had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light, I will end with the Gandhi Katha Dhun or hymn in Hindi, which is Shubha Mangal Ho. May there be auspicious good. May there be good. May the earth be auspicious. May the sky be auspicious. May every particle on earth be auspicious.
शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल